Now, I've never actually done this before. There's something that seems kind of problematic because my whole goal is to be like sort of balanced in the way I present things. And so, especially with my students, I don't tell them my own views on these kinds of things. But I guess in a way, this is a good check on whether or not I'm presenting things in a way that is balanced. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you what I ultimately decided on how I'm going to vote, but that doesn't mean that that's how you should vote. You should vote based on your own values and your own issues and concerns. But I thought some people, invariably ask me, how are you voting? In the past, I've been reluctant to tell. I wasn't going to include this in the actual videos, but I would go ahead and decided I would do this. So if you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. As far as Proposition 1 goes, I will tell you ahead of time that I am a strong supporter of a woman's right to choose, and I was distressed by the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe versus Wade. Most of my adult life and waking life, I'm a father of 3 daughters, has been with the idea that there's a constitutional right to access to abortions. And so up to a certain point. And so I believe that that was a good decision. I was troubled by the overturning of Roe v. Wade. At the same time, it is the case that the right to access to an abortion prior to viability is protected by California law. There's just no question about that. And so suggestions to the contrary are just not true. At the same time, I like the idea of the state making it more difficult to restrict access, to restrict access to abortions. For a long time, I didn't think there was any way Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned, and now it has been. And so making it more difficult to restrict access to abortions, to me, is ultimately a good thing. I don't think it's necessary right now. It's very unlikely that the state legislature or the state Supreme Court would try and restrict access, but to the extent that people are concerned about it, so am I, and so I am in favor of that. So I will be voting yes on Proposition 1. Proposition 26 and Proposition 27, I'm going to put them in the same category. There's part of me that's just offended by the misrepresentation of the facts in the commercials that have been bombarding the airwaves. And so I'm like inclined to vote no, simply because I just think that they're done in a way that's like deceptive. But I'm also concerned about, and I don't know why people are really concerned about sports betting, but it just doesn't seem to me that this is the way to get things done. I'm a political scientist, and I like the legislature doing their job, and their job is to like figure out these kinds of things. So when people are when special interests are highly motivated to get things on the ballot, right, and so they pay to get signatures to get things like Proposition 26 and 27 on the ballot, it makes me suspicious of their motives. I would like things to go through the legislature. If the legislature isn't doing what the citizens wanted, then that's what the initiative process is for. But I don't think that that's the case in Proposition 26, so I'm voting no. And I'm also voting no on Proposition 27. And in part, I'm voting for no on Proposition 27 too, because this argument that they make that it's going to cure homelessness in California just bothers me. Proposition 28 is really the one that I struggled with the most, in part because I don't like ballot box budgeting. I don't like it when we're committing money to programs, even ones that I think are a good idea. That's not how the budget is supposed to be established. Yet again, my own bias is to go ahead and let the legislature do their job. We live in a democratic republic. We have representatives who their job is to come up with a budget. And so doing this through the legislative going around the legislative process is troubling to me. And at the same time, as an academic, I understand the value of arts and music education, not just sort of the benefits of arts and music themselves, but the connection that research has shown to so many other benefits that come from arts and music education. especially in the after COVID, with so many people suffering, kids suffering in terms of their performance at school, and in particular low-income students suffering as a result. Um, the idea of going ahead and committing money to something like this seems like, okay, it's a good idea. I was very glad to read that there's a provision in the proposition that allows the legislature to reduce funding on arts and music education. If it locked it in and didn't allow them to reduce it in case of a financial crisis, I would vote no. But ultimately, after I weighed everything out, I decided, you know what, I'm going to vote yes on that. So I ultimately, although I struggle with this, ultimately I voted yes on this. Proposition 29, the dialysis clinics. As I explained in the arguments against, this is the third time that we've seen a dialysis proposition. Once again, this is a complicated topic. And to me, if there's something deficient in the dialysis clinics in California, then I want people who are interested to go to the legislature and say, hey, we have a real problem here in California. We need to fix our dialysis clinics. But I don't see that happening. Instead, what's happening is it looks like primarily this is the service employees union that is in a protracted battle with the dialysis clinics, the two main owners of dialysis clinics. They're trying to unionize the workers, and so this is one of their negotiating tools. That's not the appropriate place to try and get this done. If they're truly concerned about problems in the dialysis clinics, if there are deficiencies in the dialysis clinics, then go ahead and go to the legislature and propose some legislation, or try and get a legislature to propose something. I would be more sympathetic if they were going that route. It just doesn't seem to me, in reading everything, that their primary concern is what's going on in the dialysis clinics. And in my research, I didn't see anything to lead me to believe that there's a problem with dialysis clinics in California. And in fact, when I was doing one of these propositions a few years ago, I knew somebody whose husband was on dialysis, who has since passed away. And his wife was speaking about the treatment that he was getting when he was on dialysis. And she said the people who worked at the clinics were amazing, were just amazing. And so that's anecdotal, but it left an impact on me. And maybe you know somebody who's on dialysis and you've heard the same kinds of stories. So I'm going to vote no on that. The zero emission vehicles one, I'm generally supportive of efforts to go ahead and reduce climate change. And so I think this is a good idea, but once again, my bias is that I want things to go through the legislature. The fact that this was put on the ballot when it was, while the governor and the legislature were working on the zero emissions vehicle mandate, and they're happening at the same time, seems to me not the best approach to trying to come up with a single uniform way of dealing with reducing both aiding in reducing the effects of climate change. And so what I would rather do is wait and see what's going to happen with the zero emissions mandate that already passed in August, and then rather than layering this on top of it, going ahead and waiting and see what's going to happen as that policy is implemented, because that was passed by the legislature. Then if something additional needs to be done, then perhaps a proposition can be offered. But again, my bias is always to go through the legislature. So I'm going to vote no on that. Then Proposition 31, that one is pretty easy for me. I'm going to vote yes on that. I understand the argument that prohibition doesn't work, but the kinds of things that are done to sort of encourage younger people to smoke and the negative effects that that can have for a lifetime is extremely problematic to me. I mean, I will be honest with you, I don't know why cigarettes are even legal anyways, since we know they cause cancer. Any other product being sold in the United States that we knew caused cancer, like if we knew Mars bars cause cancer, they'd be taken off the shelves immediately, but cigarettes are allowed. And I say that as a former smoker, So I understand the draw of cigarette smoking. I am no longer a smoker. But anyway, so I'm going to vote yes on that. So these are my recommendations. I don't know if they're helpful to you or not, but I figured this time I would go ahead and do it. Apologize for rambling.